So this week we're going to do a continuation of the beer on the Maimer Shchera and Ivanava. And we're starting from Daf Yud Amud Aleph, the top, and beginning with Ois Hey. He says, this is Shchera Ani, this is what he says, this is what we say, the Jewish people, or the Knesset Yisrael, that comes down into this world, into the worlds of Biyah, that says, I'm black, yet I'm beautiful, and don't see me, Teraoni, שאני, שחרחורת, don't see me that I'm black, and ששזפתני השמש, because the sun has tanned me. So we'll see in a second, that means that even though the way I come down here, I'm in a way of black, and I'm in a limited place, and in fulfillment of in physical things, the Torah mitzvahs, but specifically through this, I come to the higher level, which through that new things, novel things get revealed, which refers here to the revelation of the essence of Hashem itself. He said that in general, this happens through the fulfillment of all mitzvahs, positive and negative commandments. Remember that we learned before, he had brought down that the hairs of Zah, that in there is dependent all positive, all tahar and tameh, all things that are pure and impure. The negative and the positive. And we learned that really there's a level in Zah itself, in the lower level of the hairs, that has in it this positive and the negative. Even though we've been saying that generally positive mitzvahs come from the hair of arech, the white hairs, yet there's this idea here also that there's this, in the black hair itself, there's two sides. So basically through all mitzvahs aseh, mitzvahs leisaseh, we reveal new things. Because they are in physical things, which they're sources from Olam HaToyu, and the Oiris, and the light of Toyu, as we said, ascended into the essence of the emanator. And therefore, through the fulfillment of his desire, which is his desire, Ratzon HaElyon, the supernal desire of Hashem, specifically in these physical things, we reveal the light of the Ein Sof in a more revealed way than it was revealed in the light of Tikkun, as it was originally, as we've spoken about in the previous ice. And even though down here it's hidden, in other words, the Eibishter is hidden, and it's in a way that I'm hidden as well, basically, the Jew, and it's in a way of contraction, yet, shesvasani hashemesh, the sun is what has tanned me. What does that mean? That we say that the name Hashem and Elokim is like the sun and its shield. And so the level of sun is the level of the supernal unity, which is that to Hashem is the greatness, in other words, chesed. In other words, that all the midas, all the spheres are totally nullified within the light of Hashem. And therefore, when it shines down here, the sun in a revealed way of the supernal unity that you see only godliness in the soul of a person, through that which he thinks and he contemplates in his Shema, in this idea of the supernal unity, that he sees that everything is only the Eibishter, that's all there is, and everything is just part of him. And you can see how everything is like nothing before God, and through the fulfillment of mitzvahs, because every new revelation from the Ein Sof, which is beyond evolvement of the world, beyond Ishtalshalos, has to be through some intermediary, as we spoke before, which in this case would be the level of Keser. And through Keser, we know is the numerical value of 620. So through the 613 pathways that come from the skull, in the spiritual realms, which is higher than Atzilus, and it gets evolved down here through the fulfillment of his desire, which is how it's revealed. So through that it gets revealed the light from Soviv Kolaman, from the light that we spoke about before, is the light that is surrounding, permeating yet surrounding the world through the fulfillment of his desire in physical things, that they're sources from the world of Toyu, where the lights have ascended to above, as we spoke about before. So this is in general by mitzvahs aseh and mitzvahs leisaseh. And this is just in the first level, and as we've gone back in the Maimer, just the very fact that it's being done in the physical world is already a blackness. That's one level. then within that itself, there's the loisasa within this physical world. He said, now, but the greatness of the revelation that happens through the fulfillment of the loisasa, of the negative commandment, is even greater than the revelation that happens through the positive commandments. And he said the reason for this is, or the explanation of this is, because we find in that soiviv kolaman, in the light that surrounds the world, the surrounding light of the world, there's also two levels. One is what's called the surrounding light of the world, soiviv kolaman, it surrounds the world. In other words, it means that it has a connection to the world. And even though it's surrounding it, and it's not revealed within it, it's, so to speak, ethereal from it, even though it permeates it, but ultimately it's a way that we don't recognize it, so we call it surrounding. So it's not revealed within the world. Yet, because we're able to call it surrounding the world, and so it has some connection with the world. And to this level of soiviv kolaman, that it should be revealed in a revealed way, that's through the fulfillment of mitzvahs aseh, positive commandments, which are in things that are permissible. In other words, in things that are mutar. You're allowed to eat kosher food. You make a bracha and you fulfill a mitzvah with it. But the essence of the Eibishter, the essence of the light, you can't call him in essence, in truth, surrounding the world, as we mentioned before. Because this is the level of I am God and I do not change. And as I am before the world, so too once the world is created. In other words, there's no change whatsoever and he has no connection to the world and he's beyond the world entirely. And so this gets revealed through, this level now could get revealed through the negative commandments. Specifically, which that is through the severity, which you push away the shell and the peel, you push away the negative. Through that, as we spoke about earlier in the mimer, you reveal a deeper connection with the one himself, the one itself who has these desires. In other words, as we spoke about before, a king could tell you what to do, and by doing them, you fulfill what he wants. But if you really want to know who he is, you have to know the things that he doesn't want you to do. And in that, you have a relationship with him much deeper. And so, this, because the severity in its source, the gevuris in their source, are much higher than the levels of kindness, like the quality of gold over silver, or as we find that salt sweetens the meat. And as it says, could one eat unsalted food without food, or in other words, tasteless or raw food without salt. In other words, because through the salt it brings out a flavor. And we know that flavors, which flavor in Hebrew, in Lashon Kodesh, tam, also has the meaning of, like we say, notes, that the music notes we mentioned before. And we say the level of tam, flavor, taste, notes, that's a very high level, and he says that specifically the palate is what gives you the flavor. And as we see that the letters that come from the palate, the gimel, the yud, the chaf, and the kuf, they are higher than the other letters, as is explained in the Maimer Sfat Macharas, and look in Idra Zuta, and I think in those places he explains that there's five levels. There's the 4 standard levels. Then there's a 5th, which is beyond all the others, which is the letter of the cheich, which is the level of the palate. And this gets revealed specifically through salt. And even though it itself is lower than the food, because you can't eat it by itself, and it is a level of severity, but yet it's what makes all other food tasty. Or as we find that one word is worth a sela, which is a coin. So then the silence is worth 2. In other words, that through the fulfillment of loisasa, in a negative way, which are in things that are prohibited, which there the sparks have fallen, which their source is from a much higher place, therefore through the fulfillment of his desire to push away the klipa, through that you reveal the essence of the Eibishter, of the light itself. I think this is what it says, that I am black yet beautiful. And like what? He said, Kaale Kedar. And as we mentioned before, the tents of Kedar, they refer to these blackened tents that have 2 levels, a black side and an inner tent, which is white, etc. Because we explained before in the idea of Avram that from him came out Yishmael, that he comes out in a way of dirt, so to speak. The minerals that are in the silver that are not silver, they're called sigim, like a dirt. And like we said before, that the idea of the lion that comes down here in this world comes from the face of the lion that's in the Merkava and the godly chariot in the spiritual worlds. In other words, it came from a higher place, yet falls lower. And he said, even so, it gets its life force from Avraham. Yishmael still gets his life force from Avraham, even after he comes out from Avraham. Only that his life force is mainly in a way of makif, in a way that's before, that it's ethereal. He doesn't feel it within him. And I don't have the right word in English to explain this, but just to do it this one time, that it means, doesn't mean that he doesn't give him any type of life force. Actually, it's the main part of his life force is the godliness and what he gets from Avram Avinu. But because he cannot distinguish, he doesn't know where it is, we call it makif. So, for example, we'll give an example for this. We can, our consciousness. We don't know where our consciousness is anywhere within us. So therefore, its level of makif, meaning we know the consciousness is the very essence of who we are. It's our very life. Yet at the same time, I don't know where it is. So therefore, I call it something that's everywhere, but it's called surrounding because it's not something that I could feel tangibly. Now, you could say the consciousness, we actually could consciously recognize things, and therefore there is a certain level of pnimius to it. So then we would say, what is something that has no pnimius is like your life itself. You know you have the life, but you don't know where it is and what it is. So it's the same concept, something that is beyond something that affects you in a regular manner, in a manner that you could perceive, but you know that it's everywhere. It's your very basic ingredient of life. And so it's the same thing. The life force that Yishmael gets is also from Avram, even after he gets born, but it's in a way of makif. That means it doesn't permeate him. It doesn't become part of his known consciousness. Why? Because the other side, the sitra achra, is not, in other words, evil meaning selfishness, is not able to receive from anything from holiness in a revealed inner way, only in a way of makif, only in a way that it's separate from him. It's something that doesn't come revealed in him. As we found by the 11 spices of the Torah, that 10 of them are enclosed within the klippas in a way of exile. But then there's 11th, which is like a makif, it's beyond, and it's called the levaina, which is in essence white. But their main life force comes from where? From this level of levaina, from the makif. So there's two types of naisa, there's two types of makifim. There's two types of levels that surround the person. He says, and it's similar to a garment, which there's a garment that's from a surrounding light that's a close one, and another one which is a distant one. So the second makif is like a higher level. It's like a tent. Instead of being like a regular garment that one wears, which is something that surrounds us, but it's close to us, the house that we live in, which is also a makif, but it's a distant makif. And so the same way also a tent and a dwelling place is much more expensive than just a regular garment, which is called the closer makif. She says that which the holy levels, the kedusha, gives life and sustains the side of ego, the side of self, or the sitra achra, which is side of evil, is only from the distance. And that's the idea of Ole Kedar, the tents of Kedar, which an oil, a tent specifically, and the Jewish people are saying, or the Knesset Yisrael, Malchut, as it comes down to the world, saying, that's the way it is by me also, that I have the revelation of this level of supernal makif, the supernal surrounding light, which is the distant light, as it says, remember Hashem from the distance. Why? That this level means that this level of Sayiv Kolaman, which is called this one that surrounds the world. That's like the garments, which are from the fulfillment of mitzvahs, the positive commandments. But where it says that I am dark, it's from the fulfillment of the negative commandments, which that is the ones that are dark and black like a raven. Specifically that, I become beautiful like the tents of Kedar, that from there I get the revelation of the essence itself, of the Eibishter's light, which I can't even call him the one that surrounds the world. And he says, just like this is similar, just like that the surrounding light, in other words, the surrounding light that gives life to the sitra achra is very distant from the sitra achra. and it's not, it's beyond their realm, as it says in Eitz Chaim, the 10th gate, Perek Yud Aleph, because something that is holy cannot be mixed within the mundane, has to be separate and above it. The same way, with regard to the atzmus of the Ein Sof, the essence of the light of the Hashem, so that even the highest worlds are like nothing and are distant from it in any realm in comparison to the light of the Ein Sof Baruch Hu itself, even more so than the distance that there is in the example of the evil in comparison to the surrounding light that gives them their life force, like the tents of Kedar. And therefore, the example for this supernal makif that we draw down from the Ein Sof Baruch Hu itself is like the example of Ali Kedar specifically. And you could look in the Maimer of Shmid Bayis about the two makifim of levush, of garment and house. And also, we could now give another taste, a little bit, explain this a little bit better. That why it's compared to Ali Kedar specifically, because we find that in holiness there are 10 spheres, 10 and not 11, as it says in Sefer Yetzirim, brought down in the beginning of Parshas Kisisa. And it means, what do you want to say? What does it mean? That in the level of Keser, there's two levels, the level of Atik and the level of Avarech, as we've spoken about. And the level of Atik is not of the count of the 10 spheres. In other words, Arich, sometimes, if we don't count Das, we count Keser. We count the crown as one of the 10 spheres of Atzilus. And then Arich is counted. But Atik is never counted. It's the 11th, it's beyond. And that's what it says, not 11. And look in Eitz Chaim, the Shar of Beis, Perek Aleph, the Eis Daled, that we don't count it. And the same way in the general Atzilus, etc. So he said, now this drawing down of the level of the supernal makif, that's in the level of tent and house, which is higher than a garment, that is a level of Atik, which is the lowest level of the emanator of the light of Ein Sof Baruch Hu Mamish, and therefore it's compared to Ali Kedar specifically, because there, for sure, the makif, the surrounding light, is not within the realm of the inner lights, as we spoke about before. And the same way, even in the highest worlds, that they are very distant in comparison to the Ein Sof Baruch Hu itself, even more so than the distance, and there is an example of Ali Kedar, not even close, etc. And yet, this supernal makif, which is beyond all the worlds, it gets revealed through the fulfillment of negative commandments. And for the reason we said before, because specifically through that, we reach the essence of the Eibishter, as we spoke about through the Gvura, we reach beyond what could be revealed, and we're able to reveal the essence of the Ein Sof itself. And according now, he says, to the terms of the Kabbalah, we could say the reason that it's compared specifically to Ali Kedar, specifically because also in holiness, we said there's 10, in other words, there's 10 spheres and not 11, which means that the 10 spheres in their beginning, which is Arach Ampin, and the meaning that not 11, which is the level of Atik, is not from the 10. So he says, now, we just said this, but now he says, the Arach Ampin, the level of Arach, which is the lower of these two levels, is called Seiv Kol Almin, the light that surrounds the world. But the level of Atik is not even called the level of Seiv, and therefore it is called Ali Kedar, the tents of Kedar, because there are 11 crowns. And the 11th level, which is the level of Levina, again, this white level, which is beyond all the other 10, that's the one that's called Ali Kedar. That's the one that's called the tents of Kedar. And if so, the level of Atik Yomin of Kedusha, the level of Atik in the holy levels, which is not from the 10 spheres, is compared specifically to this level. And that is why in the Mishkan there was also 11 coverings, or 11 curtains that were made from goat skin, which was to be able, it wasn't one on top of the other, it was 11 that were ringed together. So that's trying to be mamshech, is trying to draw down into the Beis HaMikdash this supernal makif from Atik. And look what it says in the Maimer V'yikra Moshe, in what it says that Moshe was not able to come into the El Moed because the cloud was resting upon it. So there again, he says the cloud refers to a level of darkness, a level that's beyond revelation, a level beyond, he says the same thing as Atik, beyond what could be revealed. Yet it filled it was a revelation of it in the Mishkan. It filled it, and Moshe wasn't able to go in because it filled the entire Mishkan. And so even though that a mitzvah is drawn down from the level of Atik as well, And so here we're going now a step further. Till now we said only level of arich. Now we're going to know that even the level of atik, you were able to draw down with a mitzvah, but with a caveat. Mitzvah only draws down from the lower 7 levels, meaning the midas of atik, which they are enclosed within arachampin. But the first 3 levels, which is the chachma bin adas, the moichen, the intellectual levels of atik, which are not enclosed at all within arachampin, they get drawn down through mitzvah, the negative commandments, as we'll explain soon. Now, this is just a thing that needs explanation, even though we're going to hit on it, we're going to touch on this soon, which is in the level of atik and arich, it's beyond specific vessels of kindness and severity, where there's distinctions within the vessels between these different traits, these different emotive character spheres, whatever we want to call them. In the level of atik and arich, there we call it akud b'kliyachad, that they're all within one vessel. That means all these different things are within one. There's no distinctions between them. You can't see distinctions. But we use these terms, being that we know that from them these things have been revealed, we, so to speak, refer to as it is in that higher realm, even though it is not in a specific moichin or midas specific vessel as it would be in the lower level of Atzilus. And this will be important to what we're going to speak soon when he'll speak about the idea of the distinction between kindness and severity only happens in Zah, while in the higher levels there is no such distinction. Yet here he's already making distinctions because it's a different, it's a revelation of something that, as it's coming down in its revelation, we know where it's coming from. Okay, so he says, according to this, we'll also understand the reason why mitzvahs are in the hairs of Zah, specifically, and the mitzvahs, the positive commandments, are in the hairs of the beard of our champin. And that's what he says, also that the Torah was given in black flame on top of white flame, as we explained before, in the name of the Rabbi. And he wants to say that the black fire, that is the level of negative commandments, and the white fire, that's the level of positive commandments. And that's also what it says, and I don't know what the Rosh Hashanah is. It could be Sefer HaMitzvahs, it could be Sefer Sefer Hadras Malach, but I didn't find it. I don't know, I have the Sefer, and I couldn't find it. So in Simon Kuf Lamed Tes, in the name of the Ramaz, or the Ramez. And so the idea here is that it says Torah Or. And this is what we spoke about before, that we said that the main part of the flame that shines is from the color that's closest to the wick. But the surrounding white flame that is upon it, that does not shine by itself. That's what we said before. And he says that Chayra, it's the opposite way. Because we find the main light is from this white light. On the other hand, the light that's closest to the wick is dark, and it's a blue light, and it doesn't shine so much. So he says, it looks like the kavanah, the meaning here is, like what it says in Zohar and Parshas Bereishis, that it says that on the dark light, flame, on the dark light, there's resting upon it a hidden light that surrounds it. And that's what it says in Parshas Lech Lecha, in the Parish of the Remez, that the hidden light is like the level of the keser, of the crown, which is concealed, and it actually surrounds all. Okay, so now we realize that there's 3 levels. There's 2 white lights, so to speak, and there's 1 dark light. So according to this, now we'll understand also an idea of Torah that was given in a black flame on a white flame. That there's 2 colors here. That the 2 first colors of white and black, that's where he says Torah Or. That Torah is light. But then there's another light here, which is a hidden light, which is the source of all this light. And that source is what we say, that the words of the Sofrim, of the rabbis, which from there it comes the level of the Sefer, which is the book, which the scribe writes a book, which is a level of Torah Or. She says mitzvah saseh, positive commandments, that is from the white, from the Nahira Chivra, that is from the white light. That is the light that is able to come in and be revealed. And in a way that you see his kindness from the God, from the Eibishter, through fulfillment of his desire and positive commandments. And that is the level of the hairs of Arachampin, which they are like the white wool. Which is a white flame, that it should be able to be revealed light, etc., in a revealed way. Sorry. So in other words, because in order that there should be a revealed light, it can only be through hairs, because if not, it would be too bright, we would never be able to see anything. So as we said before, in the idea of tikkun, that's the idea that the lights become smaller, that we're able to receive them. So it always has to be through a hair, but that's white hair. But the Leisa said they're dependent on the black hairs of Zah, which are called the black flame, which is called the black, the Eish Chayra, it's called Nahira Uchma, the dark light, which is lower than the beard of Arachampin, which is called the white light, or the white flame. Why? Because the light cannot come in a revealed way of fulfillment of his desire in an active kumva, say that you do something to reveal it. Only it's through the level of not. In other words, by holding yourself back. And therefore it's called Nahir Tichla, a dark flame. And what does that mean here? Tichla doesn't only mean dark, it also, as we know, the word also means mechala, that it eats up, it consumes something. It consumes something else. Because the main iskafia of the breaking of the evil is through what is fulfillment of the negative commandments, which is that you have to, it's almost like a flame which eats, it consumes the fuel. But even though that they're lower than the hairs of Arachampin, which is the light white flame, like we said, white like wool, but in truth, the source of the light that's in the negative commandment is much higher than the white flame of the mitzvah aseh. That means that it comes in essence from this hidden light that is surrounding even over this white light, which because of its great level, we cannot understand it in its essence whatsoever. It's explained in Prei Chaim, Shara Shabbos. And look also in what he says on the Maimer of Kibbutz Hudim about the actual element of fire, which is higher than fire itself, which is the element of fire is not seen as fire whatsoever. It is beyond revealed fire. And what is its revelation? It's through these black hairs of Zah, which they are the black flame, the black fire, that just as they are down here, they are much lower than the hairs of Arachampin, which are, like we said, the white wool, the level of the great kindness. Rav Chesed is from the 13 attributes of mercy, the level of kindness as it is in the 13 attributes of Arich, that we elevate all the things that are mutter, that they could become vessels to the Or and stuff, which that is the level of white hairs. On the other hand, the dark hairs of Zah, which are black like a raven, which is a level of gvuras that we have to push things away, and even things that are prohibited. Even though they have a godly spark, as we said before, we don't save the spark, we push it all away. We push it away with two hands. So this is the you would say on the one hand, the level of Rav Chesed, of great kindness, is higher than the level of severity. He says no. But yet, in the severity of this dark flame specifically is enclosed and gets drawn down this hidden light, this that we said, and it's not even in the white light, it's even higher than that. In other words, it gets the hidden light, the source of it all gets drawn down specifically through the dark light. Why? Because through the white light of Rav Chesed, which from there you have the idea of the right side that embraces, where you're able to elevate all the things that are permissible, that they should be a vessel for the revelation of godliness. So you cannot have a vessel for the light of the Ein Sof that's not something that could be drawn down, and it's not within the realm of being a surrounding light. In other words, it has to be something that could reveal something. It's got to be something that isn't within the realm. Only they're a vessel to the light of Seiv Kalam, but not to the essence of the light itself, which is beyond any type of drawing down whatsoever. But when it comes down into the lower three spaces of the skull of Zah, in other words, in a brain we know that there are three spaces. In other words, before the level of Zah, as we have it, there's no separation between kindness and severity. In the world of Atik and Arich, etc., as we mentioned before, it's all one. There is certain level of some way that we could describe a kindness and a severity there, but it's not really two separate things. Rather, only as it comes down into the head of Zah, which that is the source of any type of divisions, of the emotions of chasadim and gvuris, of kindness and severity, specifically there you could have and see all of a sudden the quality and the greatness of the gvura, which is the level of the negative commandments and pushing things, to throw them and to push them, that are those that which are prohibited. Which this pushing away is the fulfillment of the actual supernal desire in a much higher way than the fulfillment of doing things that are in things that are permissible, as we spoke about before, in the idea of the shell and the peel that comes before the fruit. And so this is not possible to be within the beard of Arachampin and those hairs, the white hairs, which there everything is just supernal mercy, great mercy and great kindness. In other words, even the severity at that level is a level of kindness, which is all in the white flame, as we say, white like wool. But the quality of the gvura, of the severity with pushing this away, its source is even higher than the Rav Chesed that we spoke about in the 13 attributes, as we said before. And as we said before, the idea of if a word is worth a selah, then the silence isn't two. That means that through that there could be a revelation of the essence of the Ein Sof, this hidden light, which is the hidden of all hidden. And therefore, even though down here these hairs of Zah are for sure much lower in level than the hairs of Arachampin, yet with them and through them, and through the fulfillment of a mitzvahs loisasa, which are specifically dependent on them, we draw down and reveal the essence of the Ein Sof, which is higher than any revelation that could be through the positive commandments that are drawn down through the hairs of Arachampin, which, as we said before, are like the white wool. And so this is what it says in Idar Rabbah, that because these hairs are dark and black, it says the verse here, that he reveals the depth from the darkness. And look in there in the explanation of the Idra from the Arizal, and the Kavana is, like we said, the meaning here is like we said before, that specifically through the negative commandments we reveal the depths which can never be revealed, such depths, through a white flame of mitzvahs aseh. And that's what we say also, from the depths I call you out. And this is also what it says from Ma'od amku machshaveisecha, that deep, or very deep is your thoughts. And then the verse continues later on in the Tehillim, B'frayach, etc. He says later, Lishamdam adiyat, to destroy them forever. In other words, that through the destruction, through the pushing away of klippas, specifically, we're able to reveal from the depths of the supernal thought. And he said that's the same we also find by tzitzis, that we say the blue is higher than the level of white. And you could look in Priyatz Chaim, which that is the exact same idea here, because through the mitzvah of tzitzis it says that we should not follow our heart and our eyes, which is a negative. That's the fulfillment of negative commandments. And that's through the blue color that destroys the evil and pushes it away. But on the other hand, through the white color, which is the white springs of the tzitzis, there it says, Laman Tizkru, that you remember and you'll do all my mitzvahs, which is fulfillment of mitzvahs aseh, as we explained in other places. And it'll also explain more of the reason why the negative commandments come specifically from the hairs of Zah. So he says, now Vav. So he says, the meaning and the idea of Vinava, that we're still beautiful, the idea is that the midas that are above, the midas are above Chachma, meaning they are the source of all midas. So there's two types of midas here, because now we started speaking in this last piece that through mitzvahs aseh, through the positive commandments, you're able to draw down from the midas of Atik, but not from the first three levels of Atik. So he says, so that means these levels of midas are higher even than Chachma, for sure, right? They're much higher. So what does that mean? They're the source of midas. In other words, they're not separate as different midas in any type of way, because we said before, they're all in one vessel, and it's only in Zah, in the head of Zah, that you could even have the idea of a split of Gvura and Chesed as two separate things. But these are the sources of those things. And he says, this is what he says in the Musaf, that when Musaf Hashanah and Yom Kippur and by Ne'ilah, we say Mikamoicha, who is like you, instead of saying Avar Rachamon, the Father who is merciful, we say Avar Rachamim, the Father of mercies, which that is a higher level of revelation in Rachamim, in mercy, than the level of Avar Rachamon. Because the meaning of Avar Rachamon is the idea of how the light of Rachmanis, the light comes down into the attribute of mercy, and that's already from the midos, from the attributes of Atzilus. But of Harachamim, the father of Rachamim, it was not the father who is merciful. Then you already see the mercy. Of Harachamim means the father of all mercies. That means that he creates and draws the level of Rachmanis to have mercy on the worlds and to give them life. And that's where he says, Hatoiv, the one who is good, that his mercy never ends. So he says, this is the level of midas that is even higher than Chachma. And that's why we say it, when we say this, of Harachamim, specifically when we're davening Musaf or Ne'ilam, we say the Kedush of Keser. So we're mentioning Keser. Keser is already beyond Chachma, we said already. It's the levels of Atik and Arich. When we're at such a level, then it's of Harachamim. So he says, now to be able to have revelation from there, in the midas, in the attributes of Atzilus, it has to be through hairs. As we spoke about before, there has to be an intermediary, it has to be through hairs, which hairs in general only the level of things that grow. It's like, for example, even in a man, even in somebody who speaks, and speaking a species, they also are made up of 4 levels of the daimim, the inanimate, the tzemeach, the things that grow, the chai, the life, and their speech, the medaber. They have all 4 levels. Different parts of their body will do different things. And so the level of hair is only a level of growth that within them, the level of tzemeach, which that is from the level of midas, which midas in general, all emotive levels are called also tzemeach, things that grow. On the other hand, the chachma, wisdom, in other words, intellectual levels, they're called chai. They're called living, which is higher than tzemeach, and higher than the growth things that grow, as it says, v'achachma techaya. So the level of chaya and chachma go together. And he says, just like the level of chachma of Atzilus is higher than all the attributes of Atzilus, and it's called the chaya. And the midas, the attributes that are in Atzilus, the level of tzemeach of Atzilus, the growth level of Atzilus, the same way also in the levels of Atik Yom and Arich Ampin, which is now we're going beyond Atzilus. So there, the midas, they're also called growing. And that's the idea of its hairs are white like a wool, which hairs again are growing, and therefore what's the revelation of ka'amar naka, that it's like white hairs like wool? It's the growth, the things that are midas, the growing things, the midas things, and that is the source of revelation. That's through positive commandments, but through the negative commandments, there we have the revelation of Atik Yoimin, of the Chabad of Atik Yoimin, the actual 3 intellectual levels. Why? Because the levels of mitzvah, mitzvah, positive and negative commandments, they come from the name of Yudke Vavke. The Laisa we said before comes from Yudke, the first 2 levels of Hashem's name. And the mitzvah come from the last 2 levels of Vavke of Hashem's name. And the meaning is not here from the name of Hashem, of Yudke Vavke, as it's enclosed within the 10 spheres of Atzilus. Because we have explained already before at length that the mitzvahs are the revelation of the Ein Sof through the level of the Keser, which is the intermediary, which is higher than the world of Atzilus. So we're talking about Yudke Vavke as it is higher. Only the meaning here is that they are drawn from the name of Yudke Vavke of Atik Yoimin, which is a level of Yudke Vavke beyond revelation. And if so, the mitzvahs say that they're coming from Vavke, which is the lower levels. That's the revelation of the lower 7 of Atik Yoimin, right? Because the Vav and the Hey generally refer to Zah Malchus, or the 6 midas and Malchus, and that is the 7 attributes of Atik Yoimin, which they are the midas, and the revelation of this is through the hairs. As we said, the white hairs like wool, which is called the growing levels. On the other hand, the level of Loisasa, they are drawn from the level of Yudke, which means Chabad of Atik Yoimin. And it's not possible that such a thing could be revealed through hairs and through a level of growth, of growing. Yet, this does get revealed through what? Through black hairs of Zah, which are much lower than the hairs of Arachampin. And that's what he said before. He reveals the depth from the darkness. And the idea here is, because it's the opposite way, the other way around. In other words, because the level of Chabad of Atik Yoimin is such a high level, therefore, its enclosement, the way it gets enclosed in the levels that are here, down here, as he said before, like the idea of the lion and the ox, the lion ends up much lower, the same way this ends up in a much lower place. That the lion that has from a higher source, from the source of the ox, in its source, it's higher than the ox, but when it comes down, the lion is much lower. Why? Because that's exactly the reason. The same way And to separate, we'll understand also above that the light that's in the level of Chabad, of Atik Yomin, cannot come down in the hairs of Archampin, only through a lower level, through the hairs of Zah, which there the light only shines through pushing things away in a way of negative, in a way of loy, of not. Now, just understand also the meaning of what it says, Shcherani v'nova, that I'm black yet beautiful. That in other words, to have the level of revelation, the level of beautiful, is specifically through the black that I'm black. In other words, is black like a raven. And the idea here is, what's the meaning of the word beautiful, nava? He said that's what it says, that the wisdom of a man shines on his face, which that is what it says in the brachas. Yar Hashem panav elecha, that Hashem should shine his face to you. Which the idea of a face, and Yar, the shining his face, is the seventh tikkun which there is in the 13 attributes of mercy. Which in the 13 attributes in the Tikkunim of Archampin, the seventh one is emes, is truth. And that is the shining of the face, which the face is empty from all hairs, right? The beard on the bottom of the face, but not on the face itself. There's no beard, there's no hairs. Why? Because it's higher than the level of hairs and such contractions, which is only a level of tzemeach, of growing. But the wisdom of man, which is chai, shines on his face, which is the essence of the wisdom of the keser that's higher than the level of the tzemeach. And you could look this up even in the bracket here. Okay, it says, okay. So this is what it says, Shcheran even Ava, that I'm black yet beautiful, because through the fulfillment of the negative commandments, which they come from the level of the dark hairs, through that beautiful, in other words, through that becomes the revelation of the actual face and the shining of the face itself, which is higher than the level of hairs of Archampin, as we said before. Okay, so that is the first thing that we get through the level of the loisasa, that we reveal the actual face, the shine of the face of Hashem, not just that we draw something down, but we actually have the actual revelation of Him Himself, so to speak, where it's not like you're taking it from one place to another, just the Eibishter being revealed to you through the Leisasa. So then it's even higher level, which this is the idea of the curtains of Shlema, which we say Shlema means that the peace is His. Which, what does that mean? This is similar to this, based on the pasuk. It says, "Yachzik b'mu'uzi yasa shalom li shalom yasali," which here, and we spoke about this pasuk before, that when he holds on to my strength, he'll make shalom for me, shalom he will make for me. So it says twice shalom. So we learned there's one shalom in the higher realms, and a shalom in the lower peace in the lower realms. So what does it mean in the lower realms? That is that there should be a unity between, in a revelation of Atzilus, in the lower worlds of Bria, Yitzir, and Asiya, has to be through a level of peace, that a shalom that connects them and unites them. And then there's also a level of peace in the higher Pamalia, in the higher realms, which that is the connection and the revelation of the light of the emanator in the emanations, and that's the level of this Yisoid that unites them and makes peace between them, as between two things that are distant, which are not within the realm of one another, because the Eibishter himself, or who Yisbarich, the light of the Ein Sof, the Eibishter is Misnasim Ma'isaylam Batzilus. It's beyond the days and the midas of Atzilus. Yet it says that he renews betuvai with his good every single day, all the time, the creations, the actions of creation. And according to what he explains in Shalom, that tuv b'melupum, that a tuv with a nekuda that's called a melupum, which is the u sound, tuv, is the inner good, and the most greatest of the good. That's what he says. And he says similarly in Zayar Truma that the tuvai, here it means the higher level of keser, which. So sorry, I got cut off there. So he says here that the tuv that is with a melupum, as we said, which is a nekuda of 3 dots, that makes the u sound. That is the inner and best of the good. And as he looks into there, Truma, you'll see that Tuvai is the highest level of Keser, which through that he renews and draws down the light in the Rav Chesed, in the attributes of Archampin, and look in other places about this as well. In Patras Veschanon, he speaks there at length about this idea of Tuvai Mechadesh, that the Chidush comes from his good, from the levels of Atik, etc., from that which was beyond the worlds. So also in Atzilus, he says itself, there's also 2 levels of Shalom. There's a unification there is between Chacham and Bina, which is through the Das, which connects them. And then there's also the the connection and the fusing of Chesed and Gvura, which happens through Tiferes. And not only that, there's another type of Shalom within in Atzilus, which is all 10 spheres, that they should all be together and made of one and made up of each other. This is all the idea that he makes peace within his realms. So that this is all the way there's the enclothing of the light in the worlds. That he has to make peace between them. And you can see also in Yigash HaKodesh and Hoy Ma'aseh Shalom. But the curtains of Shlema, which means the Shalom is his, that means that you can't say that there's two things that you have to make peace between them, because all is like nothing before him. And even the lightest, the clear light is dark before him and totally nullified in its source, like the light of the sun within its source of the sun, but you can't even call it with the name light because it is totally nullified in its illuminary. And that's similar, or the idea of the unity and the nullification that there is in the 10 spheres of Akudim, which is called that the 10 spheres, as they are in the emanator, as they're all in one vessel, they're all entrapped, or all in one vessel, which is called Akud B'Kli Echad, which from the great nullification that they have in the Ein Sof, they're all in one vessel. You can't say that there's two things and you have to make peace between them, like in the 10 spheres of Atzilus, which each one is its own vessel. And as we spoke about previously in the Maimer, that in Zoh you have Chesed and Gvura, two separate things, and then you can see the quality of Gvura. But the way it is in Atik and Arich, it's all one thing. So only when Mashiach will come will this revelation, will this level be revealed. And that's also the idea of the curtains of Shlema, which is that when there'll be the revelation of the essence of Hashem, I am a God who doesn't change. That's called the curtains of Shlema, which is that which surrounds all the levels of Shalom and higher than anything that needs to make peace between them. He's above them all. And so the curtains of Shlema are white ones. As it says, so he says about white, not as it says. Tehine, it says, Vayashkem Lov Ma'Boker, Lovin gets up in the morning, which that is a light from the level of the supernal whiteness, which is the revelation of the supernal kindness in all the different forms and worlds that there are. And it says there, Lavan, he kisses his sons and his daughters, which that's the levels of Ilah and Olol, the causer and the affected, the giver and the receiver. And then Lavan goes back to his place. So he says this is all the lower level of Lavan. This is all the level of the kindness, of the shine of kindness of Ein Sof Baruch Hu, which gets revealed in Atzilus. But Moshe ben Olav Shalom, he said, I want to pass over and see the good land, the good mountain, Hazeh v'Halvanain. The Levanain means Lebanon, or Levanain is the white, and it's a double term of white. Pirsh Levanain, what does Levanain mean? The double term is a double white. That it's the source of the whiteness. It's the source of Lavan, which can't even come down to be enclosed at all in the 10 spheres, and it only shines in a mekif, in a surrounding way. Similar to what we said before, that there's two levels of white that there is in a flame. One that is a source of light, and one is the source of sources, but you can't even see it. This is what it says, Ve'era, that I want to see it. Why? Because the greatness of this revelation is only going to be when Mashiach will come, when it says that I will walk betwixt you, amongst you. Or as it says, Ayin le'rasa, that no eye has seen what will be when Mashiach will come. When Mashiach will come, we will see, right? So it's a level of sight. But yet, through the fulfillment of the mitzvahs that are dependent on the land of Eretz Yisrael, you could come to such a level that you could see the level of Levanain in a way of sight itself. In other words, as we said before, through things that are in the earth, things that are in the ground, through the darkness, we could come to this light. And this is called the curtains of Shlema. Or as it says, that he spreads out his heavens like a curtain. And the idea is, it's explained before, that through the fulfillment of negative commandments, we reveal the levels of Chabad of Atik Yomen, the higher levels, the three intellectual levels of Atik Yomen. And that's what it says, that the Loisaseh comes from Yudke, that we draw down from Yudke through the Loisaseh, through the negative commandments. And on this revelation, it says, V'nava, we become beautiful like the tents of Kedar, as we explained before, the reason that why this is compared to the tents of Kedar. And afterwards, he says, even greater, and not only that, but you could also reveal an even higher level than that, which is the surrounding lights of Chabad, of Atik Yomen, which this is like the curtains of Shlema, which is even higher. Okay, next piece is a little bit difficult, but okay, look at Mavi Sha'arim, that the greatest, the highest and greatest level is what stays makif, right? Because we're talking here the makif, that the things that surround that can never even be revealed. So he says, we have to understand from what it says in Shar Gimel there, that the inner level is greater, and that's also what it says in Eitz Chaim, and that's what it says in Mishas Chassidim, in the Sect of Atik, and look also what it says in Mazvei Sha'arim, and there's one who will look into it, etc., and look in Ramaz, beginning of Parsha Shmini, about the difference of Or Pnimi and Or Makif, inner light and surrounding light of Atik, and that the Or Makif is what spreads without realm and out end, and that would be more like he's explaining here, that the level of the Makif of Atik, the level that is surrounding and beyond revelation, is much greater. And all this happens through the level of being dark, shchirani, that I'm the neshama, that I'm dark, black, that the neshama comes down into this, down here, to fulfill the levels of iskafi and itzhapcha, to transform and to break, to bend and to force the evil, the darkness into light, and through the leaving and moving away from bad and doing good, through that we are able to refine all the dirt that there is that fell from the breaking of the vessels of Tayu, and there'll be no separation, that separates between us and Hashem, and then will be revealed the glory of God, and eye to eye we will see, and on that day there'll be Hashem Echad, and His name will be one, and etc. And he says now in the paragraph, in the footnote, and we'll also understand another thing in the level of the curtains of Shleima, from what it says in another place at the end of the Mimer, that you don't know the difference between Ar Haman and Baruch Mordechai, that cursed is Haman and blessed is Mordechai. And so he says the idea of that you're supposed to drink until you don't know the difference. He says the idea is that the cursing of Haman, that's the idea of Klippa, the shell that conceals and hides on the name of Yud-Kei, which is a level of negative mitzvahs. And Baruch Mordechai, blessed is Mordechai, is the drawing down of mitzvahs asay, positive commandments, on the level of Vavhei. And so the level of tshuva law, the supernal tshuva, higher level of tshuva, which it ascends and it reaches so high, it's higher than the Yud-Kei and the level of Vav-Kei. And it says by Yom Kippur that before God, above God, before Hashem's name, Lifnei Havaya Titaru, you become pure, higher from the name of Havaya, which in it is dependent amidst the positive and negative commandments. And the same way in Purim they merited to have this revelation through this self-sacrifice at the decree of Haman, that their faces became dark in their fasting and also in the very decree itself. And this is what it says, that I'm black, but yet beautiful like the tent, like the curtains of Shleima. And therefore the joy of Purim is until you do know the difference between the two, because it's a level that's higher than both levels of positive and negative. And therefore on Yom Kippur also the red string would become white, which that is to draw down from the source of whiteness, and as we said before in the concept of Levana.